Here we go. And I say, welcome to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and I'm here today with producer, director, writer John Yost about his new film, Alien Abduction Answers. Thank you, John, for being here. This subject is actually the one I feel closest to. If we take the phenomena from lights in the sky to this internal contact, the abduction, if that's what it is, and who knows, it is the central issue about this phenomenon. It's like the reason I think the government really isn't coming forward because they don't know how to address this. So talk about the movie, talk about why you made this movie, and I think it's very important, but why did you feel you had to make this movie?
Well, first of all, Alan, thank you very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it. Secondly, this was actually an accident. I've worked in the television and film business for many, many years, and we're usually guns for hire, if you understand what I mean.
Hmm.
Somebody, a big producer, will come in and need a writer or a director or a producer and hire my company to do that, which is Rhino Pictures. And but we started to get involved in original programming and creating television shows and films. And we were guns for hire on a film that had a lot to do with the phenomena of UFOs and shiny lights in the sky. And and during that uh, those excursions out into the forests and the desert, uh, we came upon a lot of phenomena. And what it did for me was it reminded me of a childhood experience that I had been lying about for many, many years. When I was 7 years old,
What do you mean lying about it?
well, I hadn't told anybody about it, and it marked me in a physical way. And so I had to lie about the mark. I had to lie to cover that. And then,
It
of course,
actually left a mark on
I'm
your
I'm
body,
I'm scarred.
and
Yes,
you
yes,
knew that was from a contact experience.
100%. It always was. You know, people talk about repressed memories and things. No, this was a real life event that had happened, almost like a
Hmm.
car accident. And and I went to the doctors and they examined it, and and the whole event is laid out in this film.
Right.
But my father, during that time, didn't like the answers I was giving as a 7-year-old boy, which was that I had had a visitor at night and that he, in his encounter with me, had left me scarred. And so when we went to the doctor was a little puzzled, a little nonplussed about it. And my father said, "Listen, you keep this to yourself. I don't want to hear any of that bullshit." And he didn't want to scare my mother, who was terrified of the situation, and my sisters. So as a young boy, I lied about it to the doctor. I lied about it to people who asked me about it. And then I lied so many times, I lied to myself. And I grew up and became a normal guy with a job and everything else. And
Did you
but all
forget about it, or did it
no, never,
always?
never,
You
never.
never
You
did.
Well, the reason you can't forget about it is this, Alan. Can you forget that you have a nose? No, I mean it's right there on your face, right? So you bump it if you walk too close to a wall. I have a It's a raised physical scar in a very interesting configuration, and it's on my left shoulder.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's no way to escape it.
So when you were doing this previous film, which
Yes,
happens to be called Making Contact, right?
yes, it was. Yes, it
Just,
was.
but you came up with that name before you even saw that I wrote a book about that, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I designed that because it was all about the CE5 movement, that particular
Yeah.
film, and so these people were trying to make contact, and I said, well, we should call them making contact.
That's great because I came up with it because I don't know, that name just came to me. So it's
Yeah.
in the field, and so I'm really happy you made that film, and
Well, thank you, sir.
and so we really synchronized there. That's why,
Yes,
there's a
sir.
lot we can share. So you had this contact experience when you were 7 years old,
Yes, sir.
and you hid it until you started to make this movie, Making Contact.
Yes, yes. What had happened was after that film was over, um, I had I had another contact. The experience was this. I'll just share this with you. One
Yeah.
night we were shooting, and it was dark. And one of the people that I was with said, "Hey, listen, somebody has detected some sort of energy over by the tree line." And we had been out with our cameras all night, hadn't seen very much. And I was loading up the truck with my crew, and I said, "Well, guys, I'm going to go with this person, and please, I'll meet you for dinner." And as I was walking towards the tree line, something happened. We got within about 100 feet of it, and this beam of light, like an amber flashlight, very, very powerful, and it came out of the trees, and it literally hit me in the chest, and I could
What
feel
what
it
year
moving.
what year was this?
This was 2.5 years ago.
And you're in where are you exactly when
I
it
was in
happened?
I was in Michigan. I was in Michigan.
And this being, and it only hit you. It didn't hit the other people you were with.
No, no, I was with one person, and
Mm.
I said, "Oh my God, do you see this?" And the person said, "Yes, relax, relax. It's okay, it's okay." And just then, as I was explaining this, a flash of light comes out of the top of the trees, zigzags across, and goes back into the trees and disappears. And I said, "Oh my God, have you seen that?" And just then, it, the way I describe it is if you took a piece of film or glass and you thrummed your fingers on it, a little light would come on in the shape almost as though it were a hand. And then at that point, I was completely shocked. I was gobsmacked. I couldn't believe what was happening. And I said, "Oh my God." And and just then the entire tree line lit up like a Christmas village. And these lights, like these small twinkling lights, came out and rode a wave. And as they came at me, they kind of disintegrated as they hit me. And the person beside me was standing there just completely blown away. They had seen everything. And I said, "Oh my God, what's happened? What's happened?" And I was a little I'm not proud of this. I was a little unsteady on my feet, and they helped me walk back to my truck. And I couldn't talk very much. I was kind of shocked, and I just said, "Listen, I'll see you tomorrow." I got in my truck, and this is the remarkable thing. I was supposed to meet the crew for dinner. And so I'm sitting there for a few minutes, and I dialed them, and I said, "Listen, I'm on my way to the restaurant." I said, "John, we're back at the hotel. It was almost 2 hours ago." And for me, it was about 10 or 15 minutes, Alan.
And the other person you were with also, they noticed the
They,
missing time.
yes, yes, yes. But the effects, the contact with the lights only happened. I mean, they saw it happen. They saw it
Yeah.
happen. But and I just the way I interpreted that after, I mean, I drove all throughout that shoot, and I had a lot of time alone, and it occurred to me that something was saying to me, "We see that you see
Hmm.
us." And I don't know what that was. I don't know what kind of energy that was. I don't know what kind of entity that was, but it moved intelligently, and it to answer your original question, what it did was it set me on a path to finally tell the truth. And that's what this
Wow.
film is about.
But what happened in those 2 hours of missing time? Do you?
I do not know. I do not know.
And in the film, you're regressed, but you're not regressed back to that event.
No, sir. No, sir. The film starts with what I completely waking remember as a boy, that event. And then there's a piece of that event that I don't recall. I remember the entire thing from start to finish, but there's a piece in the middle I couldn't recall.
Uh
And
huh.
so when this takes this takes place where I'm trying to find these answers, and I find other people who have had experiences, and through them I find a woman I have referred to many times as my guardian angel. Her
Hmm.
name is Debs Shakti. I don't know. I think you know her.
Well, I don't
Uh,
know if I saw the film, so
yeah,
yes.
and Deb Shakti is a quantum hypnotherapist, and
Yes.
she's been doing it for decades. And so we built a rapport, and she said that she could help me. She could help me
With the
find out.
original 7 year old,
Yes, yes.
but you
And
didn't
so,
touch the one that happened 2 years ago.
no, sir,
Because I
no, sir.
wonder what did happen. That would be your next film.
Maybe.
So, this film, the Alien Abduction Answers film, is your own personal journey. But of course, you have really, I think, the godfather of the alien abduction movement, someone who is one of my favorite people, just as a person, is Whitley Strieber. He's in the film. Maybe we could show that clip and go back to your story. Would that be good?
Sure, sure.
Okay,
Whatever you
so
say, sir.
set this up
Sure.
and
Well, this is the actual trailer for the film,
mhm,
and what you have to know about Whitley Strieber is he's really a prince of a man, as you said.
mhm,
And I was very, very lucky to speak with him through Debs. She had arranged it, and a dear friend of ours called Mark Sims.
mhm.
Um, and then that was arranged to meet with him. And then after he heard me, and he's a pretty intelligent fella, and I mean he brought
Yeah.
me down. He brought me down a few pegs, and he really asked very, very penetrating questions. And when he determined that there was something here, he agreed to be in the film. And what he does is he's literally the thread that weaves all of these stories together. So with that, I'll try to not mess this up.
No, no. Let's see how it goes if we've
See,
can make contact. So you
here,
screen share and then optimize sound and let's see how this
do you hear that?
goes.
Do you hear that volume?
No, did you optimize the sound?
This
Oh
is
yeah, I hear it
not
now. Yes. Okay.
communication, it's communion.
This is not communication, it's communion. Yes.
Hundreds of thousands of people have claimed contact. That will change you. It changed me.
Lost in between two worlds and two dreams.
This was something that I kept buried for years. Strange things would happen. I didn't want anything to do with it anymore.
He came at me, and I fought for my life.
Ships started to pop up in the sky.
And there's this bizarre disk of light. And it is moving across the sky very fast.
The experience is often very terrifying.
If I felt fear, I would crawl under my covers, hoping that it would go away, whatever it was.
I know that we were put in that craft.
I knew I was going to go to another planet.
And the being was right next to my face.
He saw two shadow beings. That's when I felt like I was going to die.
I had a real encounter with something. Even if I had to live with the fear, is to know the truth, is to know.
Great. Virgil film, you can unshare the screen. Alien abduction answers. And just unshare up at the top. Yes. Great. So that film is going to be released in April.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And where do you think people will be able to see the whole thing? Do you
Sure.
have a
We have a distributor working with us very closely. We believe it'll be a soft launch in I'm sorry. We actually have the premiere at the Midwest Weird Fest in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, on the 4th, 5th, and 6th of of March. But then there'll be a soft launch probably through iTunes and then into the big streamers. We're waiting to have the official word, but this is a larger budget film. It, as you can tell, it has very high production values. Our cinematographer Tad Mackwicki, and our director of post Mark McCouga, and our editor Joey Kelly. We spent a tremendous amount of time. Danny McCouga, and our entire team. Once again, we're not a couple of guys with a van. You know, we've been in business for almost 38 years. Rhino Production and Rhino Pictures. Our general manager Ray Proya authorized the film, and so we were able to move forward with it. It's a long, kind of rambling answer, but just to let you know that when you see the film, this will look like a big budget cinema production.
And it will be available online, mostly, or theatrically? Are you planning a theatrical?
This will, yeah. Today, just to be frank with you, in the business, unless you have a superstar, you're not going to be released in the theater. 90% of the things since COVID automatically go to streaming.
Right, which is okay. I think
Sure.
it actually presents more of an opportunity for people to see it because
Yes, sir.
people aren't even going to theaters at this moment, or maybe starting to.
Sure.
So this film, Alien Abduction, I think it's I'm writing about that, and I think it is the central topic, like I said before, within the whole phenomenon. This is one of the reasons I think the government is not coming forward. I mean, yes, there's ships in the sky, that they've already acknowledged, but what are they doing here? What do they want? And what's their interaction with humans? I think a lot of them don't know, and I think a lot of them that do know don't want to say this. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to agree with you emphatically. Alan, it occurs to me that people in this community, when they speak about the phenomena and the government's role, they talk about disclosure a lot. That's the phrase they bandy around. And I don't know if that's the correct phrase. And this is what I mean. Disclosure means I have power over something and I can share it with you because I've controlled it. I think it's going to be more of discovery. I don't know if you know this, but there are probably around 500 reported sightings of unknown phenomena per day in the world. Okay, now I'm not saying what they are. I'm just saying that they're reported. Well, there's going to be a time when there are just too many of these reported. It will not be a controlled release or disclosure. The government has leaked what it can leak and will continue to leak a little bit. But the key of this, as you have pointed out several times, is not the machinery, it's the entity. It's the source, the agency that sends these things here. And I'm not so certain that anybody really has a full grasp. That's another one of the key pieces of this film, is that a lot of people like to plant their flag and say, I know what this is. I know the source. This is from this star, or this from. To tell you the truth, I've talked to literally hundreds of folks, and I have a feeling that it's probably a piece of all of it. It probably is, number one, our own governments fooling around with new technology.
I don't know if it. I mean, maybe
is it like some of the things, like
maybe
Freeman?
some.
Yeah, Stan Freeman used to say some UFOs are from other planets, right? So what I mean is that I think that some of this, whatever it is our own governments playing around with technology. I think some of it is from an intelligence that has been here as long as we have, if not longer. I think some of it is from another star system. But I think also, and the most exciting part of that whole thing is, I think some of it is also ultra terrestrial, something that might be able to span dimensions.
The other piece, I think it is, and I agree with all of that, although I don't know how much a government is actually taking people and being part of that.
Oh no, not the aliens, not that. No. I'm talking about the things we see in the sky. That's what
right, the things we see in the sky, and that's why I wrote this book, because of all these 11, 12 different essays because no one has the answer. I totally agree. Not the government, not the politicians, certainly not the media. But I also think, including all the things you mentioned, that it's an aspect of us. And so when Whitley starts out in that trailer saying it's communion, what does he say? It's not about.
It's not communication.
Yes.
We're not experiencing communication. What we're experiencing is communion. Yeah.
Right. That is such a key line because, it was his wife that said to him when she was in a deep sleep, Whitley, call your first book Communion, a first book about the subject.
Yeah.
And that has such a deep connection. Communion, what does that mean? How is this phenomena a part of who we are? And, your reawakening 2.5 years ago to that light, I think, took you into a deeper communion. And
Agreed.
so the communion, yeah, there's a frightful element and there's a shocking, traumatic element. But I'm trying to understand, what does that mean, communion? I feel it's true, but what does that mean for you, that essence of communion?
It's such a good question. Thank you, Alan. That's what I'm still trying to find out. What I wanted to explore in this first film is I wanted to take people from where they are, which is unknowing and fearful. I wanted to shepherd them through that because I experienced that on a very visceral level. I wanted to show them people from around the country, just like them. When they look up on screen, they're going to see themselves. These are your neighbors, your friends, the people you go to church with. This is not some crazy person who lives out in the desert, although there are people like that too. And these are people who function every single day but have had extraordinary experiences. And through that process, through that catharsis, I opened my mind, and these people have helped me. And Deb Shakti and, of course, Whitley Strieber have helped me open my mind to the possibility that what we see in the sky is not really the answer, that the answers are more uncomfortably closer to home. We might want to look in the mirror before we look to the sky.
Well, I agree with you, but it's so complex. I just spent a weekend with Linda Moulton Howe at the Conscious Life Expo, and her chapter in my book is great, but she says she doesn't have, she's been at this for 40 years, like Whitley, John Mack was involved deeply, and I think you're right. It does have to do with us, but it's so complex.
Yes, yeah, but that's my point. I think that what we're dealing is not just one agency.
Yeah.
This is the problem. People try to say, like, for example, in the film, I say, these things or whatever we're experiencing can't all be baby eating monsters, and they can't all be these super spiritual entities. They're all around. Here's an example. If I was sitting in front of you, you might say, okay, here's a middle-aged guy from the US. Well, if I show you a gentleman from, say, Nairobi, well, he's a human and I'm a human, but we look totally different. So, okay, so we're both aliens, we're both humans, and this is one planet with a huge expanse of the universe and the dimensions that we know of now through our physicists. It's impossible to wrap our arms around.
No, I agree. It's impossible to wrap, but I think we're capable of wrapping our arms around it, but we have to change our view of ourselves, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And you do a regression in the film, which I actually think is the most dramatic part of the film, where you are brought back, and what Deb, what's her name, Shakti, helps you get in touch with this soul essence that you really are, and this voice comes through you, and you sort of have the answers there to the whole thing, right?
Yes, sir. There's a perspective there. It was, I have to tell you, I was petrified to do that. I really was, because I didn't know what I was going to say. I was afraid, And I've gone through this entire thing. To be honest with you, Alan, I have asked many people to call me a charlatan. I've asked many people to call me a liar. Um, you know, Lynn Buchanan, I had a long conversation with him. I asked him, I said, please tell me that I'm full of crap. I don't want to be this guy. Um, Clifford Stone, who, as you know, passed away, God bless him,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
what an empathic guy. And I mean, I asked him to tell me that I'm lying.
Well, Clifford had direct one-on-one physical 3D
Yeah.
contact, so
And
he's not going to say
he wrapped his arms around me and said, no, John, you're not. And he comforted me. So when I went under, I had no idea what was going to happen. And through that process, number one, my memories became crystal clear and I could see the missing piece. And I shared that with the audience, what happened. And it's pretty amazing. Um, the the thing that I'll say about this is a lot of people talk about this, oversoul, or this, the one or the source that's above us. This is what my example to people who have a hard time grasping that is I use this analogy. I say, for example, Alan, are you a man wearing a jacket? Are you a jacket wearing a man? If you took that jacket off and put it over your chair, would the jacket jump up and be animate? No, you are the source of that energy that moves the jacket. But you without a jacket you don't need the jacket to move. And so are we souls that wear bodies, or are we bodies that have souls? And I have come to discover, once again, not know because I'm not smarter than anybody, but I have come to discover in this journey that I'm a soul wearing this body in this reality. It's
Well,
almost as though I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's
no,
almost as
no,
though
no.
if you were to have a fishbowl and to press your face into that plane, the fish would see you and you could move around, but they would have no clue that you were attached to a body that had your own volition. And then when you disappeared, they talked to the other fish, and the other fish would say, listen, you're crazy because there's no proof.
But how did you discover that? No, that's the key to, I think, to this conversation for me, and of course all the other stuff. You found your soul, but how did you find it? Through the phenomenon, through the contact experience? What was the process of you
Oh,
connecting?
you ask really great and really difficult questions. Not your first rodeo, I guess.
Right.
Um,
Well, because I want to know. I want to know
sure.
that deep internal process that you
I
are
know.
referencing.
I know. I have to tell you, well, listen, I've been lying for almost 50 years, right? So, I mean, it took a long time and a hard knocks to find out. If I asked you, if I was teaching you English, I'd have to teach you a letter at a time, and then a word at a time, and then a sentence at a time. This is how it happened for me personally. And talking to these other people, I would see that there were consistencies and there were patterns, and people would come to the same kind of conclusion. And I thought, how is that possible? And that's really what I postulated at the very end. I brought it to the audience. I said, listen, how does how does shiny lights in the sky and entities coming into our lives and interacting with us, how does this in fact make you a better person? How does this activate in you kind of this super sort of consciousness that you understand that we are all one? In fact, we are interconnected, and what I do sets off waves with everybody I touch, and even those that I don't. How is that possible? And that is the path of this film. It sounds like it's all hoo-hoo, but it's really not. It's
But
it's
how is that possible? How? What's the answer they gave you?
mm, the answer is that we finally now have the letters, and we finally now have the words. And now we can start to read the sentences.
I'm still not getting it.
I
Maybe
know.
you're more
I know. It's
mystical than
it's
I am.
no, 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 not at all. In fact, I'm not mystical at all.
Well, you're pretty
I'm
mystical.
just no, what I mean is that now we finally, if I tapped you on the back of your shoulder and you turned around and I wasn't there, you might think a leaf hit you or something. I tapped you on the shoulder and you turned around and you saw me, now all of a sudden your reality changes. Now you can start to interact with me. You can communicate with me. We can have a dialogue. We can learn from each other. Okay? And that's where we are right now with the releases of the government. It's become now an opportunity for us to have that conversation. And I don't have to hide in a closet and put a tinfoil hat on and be afraid. I tease all the time about this movie. I said, listen, guys, this really isn't a resume builder. but but if I had come out with this movie 20 years ago or 30 years ago, I mean, take a look at what happened to our dear friend Whitley Strieber. You know,
Right.
he really, really suffered along the way because of the disbelief. You know, what is society but today's insanity?
Right. Getting back to what you said earlier, asking people to tell you you're crazy, or when you've had, this is what John Mack experienced when people would come to him with these outrageous experiences, and he was a psychiatrist, and people wanted him to tell them they were crazy because that was the only explanation people had for these outrageous experiences that are still, I mean, you're coming to terms with it. I may have come to terms with some of it, but it's still so far outside reality as we know it that there's no room to put it into the way things operate. So John would say to people something like, I have good news and bad news for you. The good news and bad news is you're not crazy, meaning, great, you're not crazy, but also this stuff is really happening on a level of reality that we need to rise to the occasion for. Like, what is the nature of reality, right? Is it has to be more. So I think, but when you talk to people and they say this phenomena, and there's all levels of people, have to do with our own evolution, I'm still trying to understand how to communicate that. I mean, how do people move from fear and trauma to enlightenment and awakening? What's the step? I mean, did you deal with all your trauma? Because you still didn't remember what happened 2 years ago. Maybe that wasn't trauma, but how do we go from fear to awakening?
Once again, you put me up against the wall, Alan. I've spent this entire movie talking about how nobody has the answers, and then you ask me the answers.
Well, you have the answers because you went through the process. You discovered the source of your soul with this process. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm still dealing with it. I'm still dealing with it. You know, I've been dumped into this very deep water, and I still can't feel the bottom, but I'm swimming. And so one of the things that Whitley talks about is living with uncertainty, not being able to. And let me say this: a lot of people, you know, they scoff or they're sarcastic or they mock, and all of that is defensive mechanism. Because as Ray Hernandez says, ask 100 people and you're going to find one person at least who has had something other happen to them. And if people really examine their histories, almost everyone has experienced something that does not fit their paradigm. What I found through this movie and through this adventure is that, and through that regression, is that within my lifetime, there will not be an opportunity for us to deny anymore. The tap on the shoulder will remain there, and we have to turn around. Do we have the courage to turn around? When we turn around, it'll be so obvious, and then, and only then, can we have that communication. So I'm in the middle of that. And that's what I hope to explore in my next film, is how does that work? How do you live with that uncertainty and make it actually work? You said earlier, look, there's this community and this idea and this concept, which is probably the most important thing in the entire history of humankind. And yet there is, everyday life. You have to pay your taxes. How do you balance these things? And it's not, for me, it's not a balance. It's a superimposition. I live with it constantly as it overlays my daily life, and it's difficult.
Um, so I'm just thinking that that point where you made contact with your soul essence in the regression,
Yes, sir.
can you tap into that all the time? Was that just a moment? Was that, or is that, I think that is our ultimate process of incarnation, is to merge with that.
Once again, a genius observation.
Well,
Well,
so, but
that's what
no,
you do, right?
no, it's not what I do, but it's for me what I'm interested in
Sure,
knowing.
sure. And
Talk,
let me say
yeah.
this. Let me say this. Okay, so if you ask me, John Yost, can I do that at will? No. What happened was under the skilled um, therapy that I went through, which you'll see on the screen, you can see that happen. And it felt, and I describe it, it almost felt like this very large presence come up right behind me, and I could physically feel it. And then I opened my mouth, and I was not saying what I was saying. It was just coming from back here, straight out of my mouth. And but I mean, think about it. You know, all the religions of the world, all the philosophers of the world have tried to tap into the muses, into the one, into the source, meditation, you know, breathing exercises. And these have been these paths of inspiration and contact for themselves. This is something I think that is as ancient as we are, and
Right.
we've either forgotten about it, or we have decided that ignorance is bliss, and that is too frightening for us to
We have
engage
forgotten about it, but I think when you say for you to tap into that at will, I think this is just my impression. You're closer to it than you think, and actually, not to press you, but I think you can tap into that at will when you drop into that place and just get still, and you allow that higher knowledge to come through you. I think you're close to that.
in. I hope,
Yeah.
because I think that guy is a lot smarter than me.
That guy is you. That
That's the
who
point. Yeah.
what you're saying me, that me is just the surface of the you that's below the surface that is the infinite forever being. Yeah.
I'm the jacket. I'm
Right.
the jacket. He's the
Exactly.
guy.
But when you change that language around, you're the guy and that's the jacket.
Yeah.
I
I'm just
mean,
having some fun with you because you,
no,
you already know that answer. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know,
You're right. You're
but
so right. Yeah.
yeah, but the big question I have is what does that have to do with alien contact, abduction? I mean, that's the disconnect for me. And not that, because I know somewhere there's the answer, but what does that have to do? The deeper self and these beings taking us in the middle of the night and doing whatever they do.
Hmm. Well, what I fall back on what I say about, I think there are different agencies. So I think that
Right,
that there may be different agendas.
right.
I use a parable about us going to Mars. We might have different agendas there, but I would say this, that it occurs to me that anyone capable of intergalactic or travel would have also evolved spiritually and mentally, and be aware of that aspect of us all. And I think that there is you talk about becoming still and getting in touch with it. Well, that's a technology in itself, maybe a
Mm,
practice, whatever. And so I'm certain that all of this is important to awaken us. Birth is a very traumatic thing for a child. And here we are, and we have decided that we like being in utero, and we don't want to grow up.
mm,
Take a look at what's going on in the news today, and I think what this is this is a nudge. It's a nudge. Whitley says that these visitors are the harbinger of man
mm.
to our next stage of development, to literally shake our paradigm up enough for us to follow that tap and look over our shoulder and say, "Oh my God," you know. How many of us really realize how small we are?
So Whitley says that along those lines that he was traumatized, he was
Yes.
assaulted, he was abused. I mean, awful. And he says, maybe he says different things at different times, but I like Whitley. I
Sure.
appreciate everything he says. That he maybe needed that. I don't know if he actually uses that word to wake him up to this bigger reality. But people are traumatized. I mean, there's a part, if you read my chapter in my book, there's a part that I don't remember, and I was regressed, and there's still, although I think it has opened me up, that experience, and this is what Ray Hernandez says in Beyond UFOs, that most 87% of the people who've had these
Mhm.
traumatic experiences would not want to not have it, would
Sure.
appreciate having it. I have come around
Sure.
to the fact that this has been of value, but is it maybe doing a movie like this and what I want to write about will make it less traumatic for,
This is my hope. This is
yeah.
my hope. You're right on. I I think about it often. I'm a 55-year-old man, and I think, wouldn't it be great to be younger? But then I thought, what was I going through when I was younger? I don't know that I really want to go back. Maybe have the body of a younger man, but I'd like to know what I know today. And so I think a lot of us fear the unknown. And so that's part of what it is. When you lose complete volition and you're taken and you're helpless, that's the trauma, that's the fear, and your ego just implodes. How dare you? You can't do this to me. I'm a person, I'm a sovereign person. How dare you? Even as a child, you know, and maybe that's the same thing that happened to you. But the truth of the matter is, would you go back on what you know? No, you would keep it because it's made you wiser. You know how to handle yourself a little bit better. And I think that the catharsis of my film, for me personally, is that even though I don't know, you can tell in this light, but I still tear up when I talk about it because it was so visceral, and also I see everything that happened then through the eyes of a 7-year-old boy, and
Mm,
it
mm.
affects me that way. But every time I do, it feels a little bit better. It's like therapy to relive it. So I thank you again for the opportunity to talk about it.
No, I thank you for being so vulnerable and put yourself out there in a way where you, in this film, fully exposes your search and your innocence in a way. And I think that actually has stayed with you. You seem like a very innocent and pure, integral
I try.
being.
I try. I
Well,
hide it well with a
you
lot of
don't hide it,
self-defense. Yeah.
actually. I don't see you hiding it. I think you're. I think I met you once, right? But you're pretty much who I think you appear to be, and I think looking for answers is the key. And maybe it. I'm just thinking, why doesn't this happen on a mass scale? But maybe it has happened to. But the world's still at war, still, still functioning. This is mine. That's your. I mean, it's
Sure.
like we may represent, and everyone watching online who I really appreciate the support, the comments, the super chats, all that. We're part of a almost another world, another reality that understands this. And
But we're growing.
Yeah,
We are growing.
yeah,
And through avenues like your beautiful book, Making Contact, and your next book, and
mm,
hopefully in some small way, my film, people
yeah.
can experience it vicariously through those things, but also see the elements that resonate with them. That's the beautiful part when you see this film, and I know that you've watched it. You see these everyday people. Stacy was one of my very first interviewers. She's just a lovely girl, and she tells you exactly what it's like. And she's a normal person with a normal job. And Jan is an artist and a designer, and Jan is his artist, and all of these people. And then you take a look at Ruth, who's salt of the earth. God bless her. And she didn't want it to happen, but she saw it through her eyes. And that's why when people watch this, they will resonate with those individuals, no matter if they're a newbie to this subject or they're afraid of it. They'll be able to live through our eyes. I ask those questions that everybody wants to ask, but might be afraid to in, polite company.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important. And like I said in the beginning of the show, it is at the core of disclosure. Yeah, we can say, well, there's stuff in the sky, there's, found metals, there's craft that maybe even bodies, but the interaction, this is the thing with humans, these, whatever these beings are, maybe they're interdimensional, maybe they're us. Even Whitley, who I think is the most experienced contactee I've ever met, probably the one who's had the most direct, he doesn't even know what these
Agreed.
things are.
Agreed.
So when the government has to come forward and say, "Oh yeah, this is going on," they're at a total loss to explain most of it.
Well, what I say in the film is this. Think about this. These guys, I think I'm a liar, right?
Well,
They've
you're
been,
not a liar. I think you had to do that to protect yourself. So I think you could.
well,
My advice is just stop calling yourself a liar. Because
well, thank you, Al. But okay, but these guys have obfuscated for so many years, right? And this has been about something as benign as, lights in the sky. Okay. And I posit, I said, well, listen, how much more, to what extent would they go to cover up the idea that their citizenry is having one-on-one encounters with these life forms? What would they do? It's completely out of their mind, out of their control. Government only exists for one thing, and that's to control things. I'm always smiling about this. People say, you imagine the government taking control of that. Well, that's the only thing they do, so of course that's what they're doing. And they can't control this. And that's why I think that it will come to a certain point, the things in the sky and the contacts with the people, that it will overtake it all. And it won't come. I mean, I know many speakers talk about this, and I listened to them, and it didn't make sense to me, but now it does. That it won't be the government that gives disclosure. It'll be everyday people. It'll be you, Alan.
right. Well, we're doing it. With this, if you're watching this program, guess what? We have company. That's my favorite term. But whatever that company is, let's set the table. But it's not just that the government doesn't have control. Like, what is the military budget for? Trillions of dollars and weapon. It's supposedly to protect the citizens. I mean, so if they're not protecting us or people from this, I wouldn't say invasion, but this contact, then what's the military for if they don't have a way? Maybe that's part of the reason they appear over nuclear missile silos, deactivate the warheads. It's like, let's put that money into saving the earth, helping each other, love. So, I mean, it's completely useless unless they're creating wars, and that's maybe have happened, to keep them in business. Eisenhower, the military-industrial complex.
You touched on something that's really interesting. I love the way you phrase some of your thoughts, and a lot of people, when they take a look at a problem, and that's what this is. And I don't mean a problem like something bad. I mean a problem like to solve. They say, what isn't this, or what isn't it? If I want to lose weight, I say I'm going to lose weight. I don't say I'm going to live more healthy. And I think that's our fundamental philosophy on this earth. We see everything as a negative. I'm going to lose, I'm going to cut, I'm going to stop. As opposed to, I want to know, I need to grow, I need to help, I need to love. And that is, and this is why I keep saying, we don't realize how small and interconnected we are. When you have that perspective, it literally changes you. And as I said in the trailer, it's changed me.
Yeah, and I think maybe, I don't know, I'm just putting it out. Are we seeds to help change the planet? Or does everyone need the experience. I just.
I don't think everybody needs the experience, but everybody needs to recognize the truth.
Mm.
Everybody, if somebody asked me the other day, do you think there's more and more and more activity now? And I'm sure you remember Art Bell, and he talked about the
Yeah.
quickening. There was more things, and that may be the case. But it's my experience that it's just more people are noticing. I drive the same way home every day, and
Mhm.
I was telling somebody, I said, "Oh, I saw this billboard. I can't believe it." They laughed at me. They said, "That's been there for 10 years." I'm a filmmaker. I'm a very observant guy. How the hell could I pass this for 10 years? There are things that are hidden in plain sight. And when we start to allow our minds to accept the possibility of that, it will change our perspective and we will be gobsmacked to find out what has been right in front of us.
Wow.
Everybody won't experience the same thing that you experience, and everybody won't experience, but maybe we're just hard-headed folks. And you say, maybe we're seeds. I hear a lot of people say they have missions. I don't know what the heck my mission is. I would say to you that I'm still trying to find out. But I know that I'm supposed to live on this earth, and I'm supposed to be better, and I'm supposed to try, and that's what I'm doing.
I do disagree on one point that you said. I think more people are having experience. I think there are more sightings. I think, like I said,
Maybe.
definitely in the news. Maybe it's something like what Whitley says. The more people are aware of it, the more they see it. But I do think we are close to a breaking point, a threshold of meeting.
What do you think that is?
Well, I think the vibration of the I think that's a great question. I think the vibration of the earth is shifting. I think the consciousness is now more open despite all the problems. I think these last 2 years have been what I call a personal world retreat, spiritual retreat for the population of the planet, where somehow we're able to drop deeper into that parts of ourselves. I think it's it's the Aquarian age, if you want to call it that, and which is just a timing that the it's the end of isolation. I think it's the end of a very limited, small-minded point of view that has kept us separate, and it's ending because it's time. I think it's time to wake up out of the nightmare and create the new dream.
Uh,
This is how I open my book. Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, I was going to say, I, I think you're right on. It feels to me as though the reason that it's happening is because we're at that final. People say a Y in the road. I don't agree. I think it's a
People
T.
say what? A what, you
People
say?
people say, sometimes we're at a Y in the road,
Oh,
right?
oh.
But I think that's the wrong image because a Y is soft. This is a T. We have a dead end, or we have a left or a right, or
Mm,
this way or this way. And one of those ways is going to add or take us directly to destruction. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Or one of us is going to take us to the next level.
right.
And I think that we are just speeding down this avenue to that hard stop where
Mm,
we just have to make a decision. Now, I think about, a lot of terrible things like hurricanes or tornadoes, and you see the very best and the very worst of people,
mm,
and we're
right.
running into that, and it's going to be for each one of us to make the decision.
Mm. Did Yeah, no, a couple of things come to mind when you say that. First of all, did you see Don't Look Up? It reminded that movie that just came out with
Oh yeah, yeah, very funny.
I, it was funny, but it also reminded me about the UFO situation. Like, hey guys, something's here. Get with it. Look up. They're out there, and no one wants to listen. They're all looking at their iPhones. They're all
Hmm.
so obsessed with their own social media. So I thought that was a really good
I agree.
um, way to start to wake people up. But what do you say, though, about the people that will be traumatized when they meet the other? I mean, how do we deal with a population that's still living out of 1933 War of the Worlds, Orson Welles.
Sure.
Yeah, how do we deal with that?
How do we deal with that? I think what's going to happen, and maybe I've heard you say this on a different broadcast, but I think what's going to happen is all those people with, with very strong opinions about folks who have had experiences are all of a sudden going to turn to their neighbors and their friends and say, I made fun of you at that party, but for goodness sake, what's really going on? I need your advice. Please tell me, because I'm in a lot of trouble here. I'm sure there'll be negative reactions, but I think there's going to be a lot more. I think two things. Number one, there are going to be a lot of folks who have never said a word, like me, who finally step up and say, all right, guys, this is really what we have to look at. And then the other part will be what I said earlier, which will be everybody's been made fun of. I think, we keep talking about what a great guy Whitley is. I think he's going to be like a patron saint. At that point, people are going to come out of the woodwork and just say,
That's what I say
"What do we
about
have to
John
do?"
Mack too.
Oh, yeah, what a great man. God
Yeah.
bless him.
So,
Sorry he's gone.
yeah, no, but his contribution and even the essay I printed in my book is still so current
Yes, sir.
and still so we are in for a rude awakening either
Yes, sir.
way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The other thing, this is just my theory, I haven't heard anyone else talk about the reason that it is so traumatic sometimes to confront these beings is that their vibration is different. Their energetic, bodily, and conscious field, it shocks us. It distorts our reality because their mind field, if you want to call it that, is of a different frequency. So when you're in the presence of them, and this is why I've only seen them in dreams myself, so there's like a dreamlike quality to it's not a dream though, it's just an altered state of consciousness, so to their presence. So that's why I say in this book, you have to practice lucidity.
Yes,
You
sir.
have to practice in order to really make contact. We have to not be in altered states, not through drugs, because people say, oh yeah, because I think that's only one aspect. We have to practice lucid awareness, particularly in these dream altered states, because it's that most people that I've talked to have had that interaction. I mean, I just talked to a Chinese ufologist who's getting lots of reports all over China. And it's not safe to talk about UFOs in China, but she is getting reports of this interaction in these altered states, these dreamlike states. And if you've ever had a dream about UFOs, you don't forget it. Dreams come and go, but the ones I've had, it's like, oh, those images stay with me, that interaction. So that's another aspect, but that's what's so shocking, I feel, about their presence, is that it's a whole other frequency.
Sure. I think maybe it's because it's my job and it's my art to try to relate that to people. I mean, have you ever been near a very, very large animal? Some people are afraid to death of horses. The first time they're near, because they're so strong, there's no way to control them. It's very powerful, and if you could imagine something on the scale of 20 times the power of our mental capacity, the vibration, the development. I mean, it really, what it does is it humbles you, it crushes your ego, and it leaves you helpless and in a place where you literally have to let go. And that is not a comfortable place for most people.
I mean, I like it. I mean, I like crushes our ego. I mean, I don't particularly like it, but I like what you're saying
Yeah,
about
I know.
that, because the sense of limited self is what's in the way. I mean, when I say to you, you're close to accessing that deep voice of your soul, it's only the ego that puts, like, you think you're this director and producer, and I mean, I think I'm this, and we know we're not. And maybe when Whitley says that's communion, maybe that's what these beings are trying to tell us. I think this is what you said, that there's more to us. We have to transcend the personal false self and realize the deeper aspect of the being.
Yeah.
Could that be one of the alien abduction answers?
I think it is. I think it is. And then the next step of that is that literally, and I know it sounds trite, but
No.
that we all are one. That literally.
No, that doesn't sound trite at all. That's the answer. I put that in the epilogue of this book. Bruce Lipton says, "We are not humans until we create humanity."
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And he says it's when we have one voice, because we're one being, only then will we be able to talk to the other ones in the field. So, no, I think we can't say that enough. I mean, it may not make sense to a lot of people, but we're not even, we're more energy than we are, solid matter. We're more a wave than particle. We're in this duality of being. So, you had one more clip you wanted to show, right?
Sure. Yes, there was a.
I want people to see. I'm only saying that because I want people to see this movie. I think there's a lot to get from this. I think what this conversation, the awakening of the true self, is what really John is trying to put together. That is the answer, if there is to be one. But that's my opinion. So yeah, go ahead. What are we going to see?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, there was a piece of the film that did not make the final cut, and it was just something that was interesting. Okay, sure sound. Okay, I have sure sound this time.
Good.
It was interesting because it just so happened to be all of these facts. I'm sure that you're familiar with all the coincidences and the synchronicities that happen within this phenomena, and this is just kind of catalogs a few that had to do with my birth. So let me
Okay.
Okay. There we are.
There you go.
I was 7 years old. What in God's name did they want with me in particular? December 1965, the Kecksburg, Pennsylvania UFO incident kicked off what most UFO researchers claim was the mother of all UFO waves.
Ron Strieber was 23 when the whatever it was happened. He saw the military guarding the area, not letting anyone close, eventually hauling the object away. The government initially said it was never here. Later, the Air Force reported what landed that night was a meteor, but UFO revelers aren't convinced.
Which lasted throughout 1966 into 1967, tallying over 355 sightings, and included the beginning of the Mothman events in West Virginia.
Over 100 eyewitnesses reported accounts of the Mothman in this area.
I happened to be born in September 1966, smack dab in the middle of the most reported UFO activity in history. And here's another fun fact. My place of birth is within 50 miles of both Kecksburg, PA, and Moundsville, West Virginia. I don't know if that's relevant, but I found it interesting and I thought I'd pass that along. I'm a nobody. Why me?
Right. Great. You can unshare the screen. Just press unshare at the top somewhere. Yes. Great. Well, my answer to that is why not you? I think that maybe you're saying they dropped you off on the way of that big flare up, right? In the 60s.
I don't know.
But I think the people I've met, and maybe they change as a result, they're more sensitive, they're more artistic, there's a creative side to them. And why me? Why you? Why anyone watching? Because, I mean, personally, I feel like this is what I came for. This is the most exciting thing to ever happen in human history, meeting the other parts of ourselves. So I can't think of anything else I'd rather be involved in. It takes intelligence, it takes intuition, it takes drive, it takes working against resistance. It
takes courage.
Courage. And it's challenging. You know, I love what John Kennedy said when he said, we're going to take a man to the moon. Do you know that speech? He says, yes, we're going to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Yes, and the things we'll learn in that process.
Yes, sir.
That's why us, John, and everyone else who's watching, because it's the biggest thing to bring people around to communion with the greatness of themselves. That's
it's a big job.
It's a great job. I mean, that's what we're all here for. I mean, of course you can go and do whatever you're doing. People, just looking down, but I think it's time to look up.
I think it's time to look up.
And to look in. Up and in, right?
Look in.
So I'm so happy you've done this film. Again, when you do this release online, how will people be able to find the whole film?
Sure. Well, Alien Abduction Answers has its own Facebook. Also, my Facebook, John Yost on Facebook, Rhino Pictures. You can find us all over the place. And so those press releases will be forthcoming. And they're going to happen very soon because this is going to be early spring. So the end of March, early April when it launches. But as I said, we're having our world premiere at the Midwest Weird Fest in Eau Claire, March 4th, 5th, and 6th.
So if you're in the Midwest, in Wisconsin, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Come to
please.
I hate that people call it weird because I mean, it is for a lot, but
sure.
For me, it's not that.
Well, for you, it's every day, but for them, it's different. It's different. But part of that, and I've said this before, part of this is so frightening, but then another part is so intoxicating. Mm-hmm. It's something that if you truly give yourself the room and the space to listen, to understand, those possibilities will become real in your life. And I have to tell you from personal experience, the adventure that will be forthcoming will take your breath away.
Wait, say that again. I want to really get what you're saying. So what will be?
Well, we were talking about weird, and I said,
yeah.
And I said it's not really weird. I said it, but it's other, and it is in many respects very, very frightening because it's not the norm, it's not what we control, and because it's the other, it takes courage to take a look at that. But if you're willing to do that with an open mind and open heart, the path that will lead you on will take your breath away.
Wow. No, I'm glad you said that again because I'm taking all that in as well. And
did I take your breath away?
Well, I had to breathe, So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But it's just think of the planetary shift. I mean, of course, Richard Dolan's wrote a book called After Disclosure, and there's lots of after disclosure. But what you're saying is really, I think, at the core of the phenomena, the awakening of the self. Because we can't be the old limited being that we thought we were and meet the other on an even playing field. Yes, people can worship them and give their power away, but to meet, because I think the essence of us is equal to the essence of whatever that is. And I think it's just time that it happened. Maybe that's why now. Why us? Why here? Why?
Because it is time.
Well, it's always been time, but I think this my theory, and is that that just gets us to a level playing field. That just gets us to the place where, yes, there's free energy, yes, there's abundance, yes, there's enough food for all, there's land, there's freedom, I mean, this is idealistic and utopianism, but why not?
Why not? And you know, the thing is about us is we're great about facts, and we're really, really smart about acquiring facts. But having facts does not make you wise. You were
Mm.
talking about earlier about how the military does whatever they do. Why aren't they building up and helping people? Why aren't around the world? Why are we still fighting? Because we lack that wisdom. We lack that moral clarity. Realizing that we are one, realizing that we're part of this greater whole would allow us that opportunity to get that moral clarity,
Mm.
you know?
Just one more thing. You talk about wisdom. I feel what brings wisdom is experience. You could tell people we're one and do all these things and to have this great philosophy. I mean, for thousands of years, people had philosophy, but when you help prepare them and they see something or they're open to or somehow relate their personal experience to the movie, you're showing that experience resonates as wisdom. It's the wisdom of the experience that changes people's perspective on reality.
And I think you've touched it. I think you've touched it. This is why it's happening more often, because
Mm.
people are becoming that. They are going to become more wise because of the experience. I talked to a young lady and I asked her, I said, you could explain to me what it's like to be pregnant and have a child. And I could understand it, but there's no way that I would realize how it truly felt. There's no way. And I think what has to happen is more and more people are going to have this experience because there are more people who are listening to you, Alan, and understanding your work and opening their minds.
Yeah, I mean, my work is just to open people's minds exactly. I don't have an answer. I have a couple of ideas. I, I don't know if anyone has an answer, but presenting the truth, because this is a truth that's been hidden, then maybe there's just no way to deny it anymore, the truth. And I think, whatever happened the last 2 years with this COVID retreat has gotten people a little more in touch with a bigger picture, a deeper sense of reality. And maybe that's why this is happening now. Maybe that was the bardo, which just means passageway, we had to move through to awaken. We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But the cat is already out of the bag. One more thing. I heard someone ask Louis Elizondo, who's really leading the disclosure movement, what about these abductions?
Yes.
I think it was on, I forgot whose show, but he didn't deny it at all. He said, yeah, this is very upsetting. He took a military point. People are coming and being taken. But the interesting thing is he didn't deny, he didn't say those people are crazy. He didn't say anything like that. Jim Semivan, too, had his own experience. He's part of To the Stars Academy. These are people out front leading the disclosure movement that are coming forward and saying, look, this is a reality. So I think it's a perfect time for this movie. And you're giving people an experience that you've had and it might resonate with them. So thank you, John.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
For everything that you're doing. Now tell people how to find you, how to find your website, how to ask you questions, do all that.
Sure. I work at a company called Rhino Pictures, and you can find us at rhinopictures.com. You can find us on Facebook. Of course, you can find me on Facebook, John Yost. And we're preparing our next film, which will be the next chapter in this, because there's more to know, as you know. There's more to find out, and that's exactly what we're doing. I want everyone to know that when you start this adventure with me, you're going to see yourself on screen, and you'll come to some of your own answers, and that'll give you some peace, and that really is my goal. Thank you. I can't hear
Thank
you,
you.
Alan.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for spending the time. Thank you for the really active chat on YouTube. I was a little distracted because I was getting people's comments. Thank you, Ronnie and Yenny and Anders and a lot of people who tune into this program. Because you're already, you know, as we have this conversation, people are having their own revelations or listening to this. So something's gaining momentum. It's happening. And then we have to deal with war and starvation and all these things that the world is part. But I think there may be an answer for all that in what we're pursuing here.
I agree with you.
It's asking people to rise to a bigger part of themselves. So,
agreed, sir. You ought to put that in a book.
All right. Thank you, John. You've inspired me. No, I think there is a great project I'm planning that we could definitely. You're gonna love it when. Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So we'll talk. I just want to say, this is Alan Steinfeld for New Realities. If you're watching this, please subscribe to the station, to the channel, and click the bell so you know when there's more shows coming up. I'm doing sometimes now three or four shows a day, and not every day, but you know, it's just coming and people want the information, so you don't want to miss anything. I'm doing a lot of starseed stuff. That's a whole other part of the discussion. People saying they're from these other places, the hybrids, you know. I did a show with Marina talking about her resistance. Did you see Marina Sorin's shows?
No, sir, I have not.
Very interesting. She says she's a hybrid starseed and she's resisting some of the alien agendas that she feels is interfering with her free will. That's a whole other thing. But thanks for watching, everyone. Subscribe, and I think I'm doing a show later today or tomorrow. So just stay tuned to this channel. Thanks.